Julian Francis Godolphin joins me, author of the new book on His Majesty's service, How the King Preserves the British Constitution. Julian, very good evening to you. Now, that must have been a very tricky speech for the King to deliver. What's the process when the Prime Minister of Canada sends him the first draft of the speech? Does the King have the constitutional power to say, well, actually, no, I don't want to say that, I want to say it like this? And is there lots of toing and froing that goes on?
No, not really. I mean, the king is required to say the words the government of the day puts in his mouth, whether that's the British government, the Canadian government, or the Australian government. However, they can do things around the edges. They can personalize things around there. So we know that when the Queen, the late Queen, opened the Canadian Parliament back in 1977, she did add certain details in around the importance of Canadian federalism, as there were concerns then at that time of Quebec nationalism. And undoubtedly, the King will have done that today with the speech that he's done. He's certainly highlighted some of the personal moments in there. So, I mean, he talked about how much Canada means to him personally and how many of the visits he's actually had to the country. So there's definitely a bit of toing and froing, but the actual policy details that are in there are very much the views of the Canadian government.
I was reading today about some polling in Canada which shows how popular the monarchy and indeed the King are compared to 5 or 10 years ago. And it's quite striking that this has changed. Now, I imagine that is almost entirely down to, how should we put it, the comments of Donald Trump over the past few months or so. Some Canadians, I think, would have liked the King to have gone further, but he unless he made a speech separate from that speech in Parliament, he wouldn't have been able to. And even then, if he had made another speech in his visit, it would have really had to have been approved by the Canadian Prime Minister, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Anything the King says in public or private has to represent the views of his elected government in whichever realm that he is in. And so in this case, it would be Canada. I think the main thing that people have noticed is that the monarchy can sort of be boring. You don't think you need it. It's like a life preserver on the side of a swimming pool. It's sort of nice to look at, but you don't really think about it every day. But it becomes a real asset when you find moments of crisis or moments of challenge, in this case, to Canadian sovereignty, where suddenly people realize that the monarchy becomes the national symbol, the unifier of the nation, the absolute and emblem of Canadian sovereignty. And that's essentially what the King was doing today, sitting there on the throne in the Canadian Senate, actually reading the speech of the government, his government in Canada, and saying, no, this is, I represent the Crown, which is a sovereign here in Canada, and Canada is an independent country.
Well, it is an independent country, but it still has essentially a foreign head of state, doesn't it? It is an anachronism that it has a British sovereign as its head of state in 2025, and yet there's never really been a Republican movement in Canada to the extent that there has in previous years been in Australia. Is there any explanation for that?
No, I think it's partly that is, I think, the way in which Canadians have always built their identity as opposite the United States. Right from the very beginning, Canadians have used the monarchy as a way of defining themselves against their larger southern neighbour. You also have a similar degree to Australia in defining itself in Asia as a country of European origin, but sitting in Asia. It sort of defines itself with the monarchy. But I think it's also important to note that although the King is obviously the King of the United Kingdom, he is here most of the time. When he sets foot on Canada, he is a Canadian citizen. He is the King of Canada. He is, if you like, home in his domestic realm within Canada. And that's sort of the interesting things. The King's nature is different in any of the Commonwealth realms that he visits. And so we can't just see him as a transplanted Brit in Canada. For all intents and purposes in law, he is Canada. He is a Canadian citizen when he's there.
The constitutional arrangements with Canada, with Australia, indeed in this country, how have they changed in the last 20 years? Not much, it seems to me.
No, they actually haven't changed much because essentially the monarchy is domesticated in each of those countries. There is really no element in which the king operates in a capacity as the monarch of Great Britain, having some kind of oversight of those countries. He does absolutely operate as the constitutional head of state within those countries, whether it be Canada or Australia, and he represents that. I mean, when you saw the king today, he's actually wearing the Order of Canada, for instance, showing that he is actually the head of that particular order. He's not wearing any British awards other than the medals that he has earned through his military service.
Julian, thank you. That's Julian Francis Godolphin. His new book is called On His Majesty's Service, How the King Preserves the British Constitution.